recording up and running. Right, morning, welcome everybody. Wisdom's Chat UK edition, 8 a.m. in the UK, 2 a.m. in Chicago, where Laura is joining us from. So Laura's being the night owl. She was with us on the previous session as well. So she's she's just one of these people that can't get enough of us. So Laura, we need to know what your decision making is. Are you being conscious when you're making these decisions? That's our topic today. So how conscious are you when we make decisions, or is your decision making conscious or unconscious? And I think it's it's a fascinating topic, because I think a lot of the decisions we make are simply subconscious. Things happen all the time around us during the day, and if we had to consciously think about every single decision, we'd probably tie ourselves in knots. So certainly some of our decision making is probably not conscious, but maybe the important ones are. So Frank, I'm going to bounce it straight across to you. So how conscious are you about your decision making, or how conscious do you think you are about your decision making?
Well, I couldn't remember what the topic was, so this is just kind of off the top of my head, and it might be quite short. I think it depends on what kind of decision it is. I mean, there are some things you just do automatically, like my alarm goes off in the morning and I throw my legs out of bed and I get up. That's not a conscious decision. That's a kind of bigger decision that I make. The big decisions in life, I think I do consider them, but I think my subconscious and my past life, I don't mean a past life, I mean life when I was younger, go towards my decision making as well. So what I've learned from different things. I reckon that there are a lot of things which are subconscious. I think probably most of the small decisions that you make are subconscious. There are stupid things like, when you go to your car, you automatically go into your pocket or your bag and you take out your car keys and you ping the thing. I don't consciously think, right, there's my car, where are my car keys? How do I open the door? It's all like subconscious. But I think for big decisions, for life decisions, I would like to think the majority of them are conscious decisions. I think also decisions are sometimes made by other people for you, and depending on who you are, if you're strong enough or if you're not strong enough within yourself, then you'll go against those decisions. I'm thinking of parents and children. You will go to university. It's expected of you. So that decision is probably neither conscious or subconscious, but it's a conscious decision on the part of somebody else. So as I say, I don't want to hog the floor, because I feel as if I'm rambling a little bit because I wasn't sure of the subject. But that's my thoughts at the moment anyway. I'll maybe chip in with some more later.
Great, thanks, Frank. Yeah, look, I think that that's the way we roll here. So it's the conversation swings backwards and forwards, and sometimes we consciously decide to put some thought into it. Sometimes we don't. So Laura, can you think at 2 a.m. in the morning? I don't know.
I'm just barely hanging on. I think there are certain choices that I make that are quite calculated. Well, I should say the process up to when I decide. And then I can decide not to decide, like 3 frogs on a log. There are 3 frogs on a log. 2 decided to jump off. How many are left? 3. 2 decided to jump off, but they never did. I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I think it can be quite logical, rational, and present focused, future even, present directed, future focused. Then there's other decisions. I don't think about, I need something to eat. Okay. It's the whole process about where to go. What do I want? Not what I need, because I could have live not happy about it. So I think that some choices are conscious, some are talk about the choice of the heart, that my heart makes a decision and my heart is breaking. Your heart is literally not breaking. You're choosing to have that euphemism. I think right now, conscious choice is serving me well because I ended up here. That's all I have.
Right, thanks, Laura. Right, so Lira, you've got an indication of the way we roll here this morning. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on your decision-making processes. Do you believe it's primarily conscious or not?
Well, yeah, I think it is conscious. I mean, talking about coming today, my goal, when I got up this morning, I was going for a walk, but I kept on saying to myself, I keep on wanting to be coming on this and seeing what it's all about. So I actually made a conscious decision to basically come on here, and I looked at the time. It was 10 to 8, and I'm thinking, oh, is it 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock? And I looked, it was 8 o'clock. So I made that conscious decision that while I'm in the flow, I'm going to go with it. So sometimes you do go with the flow, and there's other times when it's like everything you're trying to do, there's something that's stopping you. So there is a battle between conscious and the unconscious in when you're trying to do things. So it's something that we go through life, and it also stems from our history and the things that we have completed. So it's a number of different avenues that bring us to whether we do the thing or don't do the thing that we're looking at. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Thanks. Yeah, so yeah, it is interesting how our upbringing, our education, our environment, our social environment, our peer environment, all have an impact on these things. And I actually wonder, truly how much of our decision making is really conscious. So Ed, you're a conscious kind of fellow, in the present.
Except when I've had too much beer, then I'm pretty much unconscious. I made a conscious decision last night. I wrote down on my piece of paper, South African chats, UK chats, US chats. And I did my preparation work for the South African chat this morning. And I thought I'd do my preparation for this between the two chats, because normally I have an hour and a half in which to do it. But this morning, of course, the clocks have changed. I only had half an hour to do it. And we went on a bit this morning, so I actually only had 20 minutes in which to do it. But I find it fascinating because, there's that whole cycle, which I'm sure you're all aware of: unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, unconscious competence. So like Frank says, when we go to our car, we don't think about it. I always check whether the car's in gear before I start, and I'm not in gear before I start it. And 99 times out of 100, I don't have to do that. But the one time when I do, it's important. So that's a sort of unconscious process. I made a conscious decision to bring my children up differently from the way my father brought me up. But at one point in time, I said something to my children. I thought, oh my God, that's exactly what my father would have done. So even though I was consciously trying not to do what he did, I'd been so ingrained by it all that I was doing it. And then later on in life, I decided to change again, and I had my say yes more policy. And that was saying yes to exciting things. Because I think very often when someone says something which is different, we say no. Or I don't want to do that. So I decided if someone said something that was different, I'd say yes. But it's very hard to do that because the past drags you back down again. And I think add into that the whole thing of unconscious bias. I realized that I think that the UK is great because I've always been told the UK is great. And then I suddenly sort of go to South Africa and I discovered you guys invented the ATM. I didn't know that. I assumed we did. And then I've always been told that we're the financial centre of the world in the UK. And then I employed an accountant from the Netherlands, and she couldn't do a bank reconciliation because The Netherlands had done away with checks 20 years before the UK had. Their financial systems are far in advance of the UK. So we make decisions based on how we've been brought up and how we've been educated and how we've been trained and how we've been conditioned. And it's really, really difficult to overcome those. And I think some of the best decisions we make are unconscious decisions, because when I go running, my conscious mind switches off. So all those trained pathways aren't in use. And I run along and I lose myself and have a great time, and I come back and I've solved a problem, or I've made a decision without even thinking about it. And it's always a good decision because it's not influenced by the pathways that have been laid down by other people. It's something that's true to me. But yeah, and actually I try to make all the unimportant decisions unconscious, because why waste time making decisions that aren't important? My grandfather, I never understood this until just recently, had exactly the same thing for his breakfast every single day of his life. And he had exactly the same thing for his dessert every single day of his life. He would have had the same thing for his dinner, but my mum wouldn't let him because we lived with my granddad. And I think what he did there was he was a very intelligent, very bright guy, but he just eliminated all the small decisions out of his life so he could concentrate on what he really loved and what he wanted to turn his mind to. So I think there's a great place for unconscious decisions. There's a great place for biased decisions in a way, as long as we're conscious of them. So that's my thoughts on the subject, and next time I'll prepare.
I think you did pretty well being unprepared, as is everybody. I see Laura's conscious has become unconscious, but that doesn't surprise me at 2 a.m. in the morning. So Trevor, conscious, you always trust your gut. So is that conscious or is it unconscious?
Precisely. So that's what I was going to say. I consciously do not prepare for any of these wisdoms chats because I like to flow, and Ed sort of demeans my process by saying that I ramble on. But I actually like to hear what other people are saying, or perhaps just throw random thoughts in and see what comes out of it. And I think the general direction of the thoughts I tend to agree with here. I think we tend to consciously take the really big decisions that affect our lives. And then, you know, as I think Frank introduced the concept of the many, many small unconscious decisions that you just take in your daily activities. But as you were all talking, there was something about responsibility for where you are in life right now. And perhaps where you are in life right now is the sum total of all the decisions that you have taken, unconscious or conscious, that have led you to being where you are right now. So to unravel this as to how important unconscious or conscious decisions are, it's interesting to actually go back perhaps and say, okay, well, what were the big decisions that got me here? What were the unconscious ones? And then as I'm unraveling back, a big decision that I made was to get married. Oh dear. I better not tell my wife. Yeah, I think that was 40 odd years ago. I'm not okay. Huge decision. And that decision, I can evaluate, unconsciously affected a ton of things that I might have done if I did not get married. In fact, I probably would not be here and I would not be alive if it wasn't for me getting married back then, because that brought a measure of control into an uncontrollable life. So I think it's quite interesting to actually turn around and take responsibility and say, you know what, if I'm the sum total of all the decisions that I have made, and I look back, do I whack myself on the back for making stupid decisions, or have they added experience? And you know, we had a chat, Wisdom's chat in SA this morning, and we were talking about things like life is a journey. You know, if an unconscious decision or even a big decision sent you off completely at a tangent to where you consciously wanted to go, but it took you onto the journey of a lifetime, can you regret that? So perhaps what I'm actually saying, wherever we've got to today, are we happy? No regrets? Can we put that down to experience? And does that help us to take one or two big decisions? And then on top of it, I recognize that my wife is responsible for everything that I'm going to do in the next 20, 30 years of my life, and it's all her fault.
You know, that can I just interject there and say, Trevor, that's a great point. That is a really good point, and it reminds me of a TV program here in the UK. You maybe get it abroad as well, where it's a comedy program where the child, the kind of 10-year-old child, has done something really wrong in the house. I can't remember what it was, and he went to his father, and his father was giving him a bit of a chastise, and he said to his father, you know, in school they teach us that about 40% of what I do is because of my environment, and about another 40% is because of my parents and their beliefs. So does that mean that I'm really not responsible for what I just did? It's 80% other people's fault. And although it's a comedy program that got a laugh, I think there's some truth in that. You know, are we responsible for a lot of what happens in our life? Are we? You know?
And if I can add to that, and I can see Ed wants to throw a word in there, but if I can add, I don't think your maths is correct. 40% is the teacher's fault, 40% is perhaps your father's fault, another 40% is your mother's fault, another 40% is the environment's fault. So you can see it's almost 200% everyone else's fault. Sorry, Ed.
I was just going to come in with, you say the biggest decision in your life was getting married. And that's a decision that's not actually made very logically, is it? No. It's all to do with love and heart and emotions. And we're almost totally, it's not something we can control, really. When you fall in love with someone, you know, you can't decide why it is. It's not because they've got this aspect, that aspect. It's not a tick list. I don't know if you have ever read a book called The Rosie Project. It's about a guy with Asperger's who decides to find himself a wife. And he's got this checklist of all the sort of things that they're supposed to have because, you know, because of his condition, he's very much into that sort of stuff. And he ends up marrying someone completely wrong for him. And it works. Because it's a decision we make that has absolutely no logic in it whatsoever. And yet all the other decisions we try and make, we try and be logical about them, which is really strange, isn't it? I just find that quite interesting that, you know, your life took on its meaning because of a totally illogical decision.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that description of my life, Ed.
Frank.
No, I was just going to say just a one-liner, and that you know, emotions do override good decisions sometimes.
Yeah, it is. It's a fascinating thing, and as I was going to say, you know, and that's all completely logical. So, but it's not. So yeah, it is. It's very interesting how we think, you know, perhaps, and I mean, you know, I suppose it comes down to also different personality types. You know, I'm sort of logical, analytical. You know, Trevor's very much on the other end of the spectrum there. Although, you know, there's always good logic in there because of experience and knowledge. But you know, he's much more of a gut feel man. I'm much more of an analytical type of person. So yeah, I think decision making also comes down to an element of that. But I think sometimes actually the biggest decisions you take are not conscious, because they actually have to be taken in an instant. They have to be taken, you know, on the spur of the moment. There's just simply not time to analyze, to think through, and you know, take the logical sort of analytical approach to decision making. And you know, it might sound like a strange example, but I recall probably 11 years ago, Trevor, you and I were in your study. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, discussing a business project of some sort. And next minute, there were 3 men with firearms standing behind us. And you had to take some pretty quick decisions on how you were going to react to a situation like that. And fortunately, we came out unharmed. They took a few things, obviously, but at the end of the day, the decision that both of us had to take in that particular situation certainly wasn't logical or analytical or thought through. It was something that was just absolutely sort of instinctive, I think, and fortunately, it worked out for us. So it could have gone completely the other way, as it sometimes does in those kind of situations, but. So I think the decision making is a really interesting concept.
So Ivan and Trevor, that situation. I mean, there's a thing of fight or flight, and my dad, although I was brought up in Glasgow, which in the day was one of the toughest cities in Scotland, if not the UK, my dad always said to me, "Flight, run." Somebody comes up with you for a knife. Don't try and fight them, just run. Then you'll live to fight another day. And that, some might call me a coward, but that's what I've always said to my 2 sons as well, who are now in their 30s. You ever get into any trouble, don't be a hero. Unless you're trying to save somebody else's life or whatever, then you've got to make a decision. But what you guys did, and you've both got different personalities, would both of you have made the same decision if you were the in charge of that situation? So would both of you have fought, or would both of you have run? And there's no judgment on either decision, but because Ivan, you said you were both at different ends of the spectrum, interesting just to find out, would you have both made the same decision if you were the alpha male, if you were the one making the decision?
There is a third thing to that fight and flight, which is freeze, which people often forget about. So yeah, sorry, but it'd be really great to hear that view from Ivan and Trevor. Yeah,
no, you're right, Ed, you're right.
Well, I'm going to answer from my perspective. I vividly recall Ivan turning around, and obviously he was thinking from his logical and analytical side, and he was turning around to me and saying, "Do nothing, do nothing." So I was interpreting in that only afterwards. I must tell you, this thing took me, when someone puts a gun to your head and there are a couple of other guys out there and you've got family. So I had family members in the lounge, and there was, the choice of fight or flight was completely taken away. Because there was my business partner next to me with a gun to his head. I had a gun to my head. Either one of us taking the wrong move would cost the other one's life, plus our life, plus my family's life sitting in a lounge. So I think it wasn't even a case of freeze. It was just shock. And in that shock, Ivan had the strength of mind to actually turn around and say, "Do nothing, do nothing, just let them take it." And in him turning around and saying that, I think these individuals realized that these people would not get up and try and fight, therefore they didn't have to pull the gun. So for me, the hero of that day was Ivan, in his logical approach and just voicing it out and saying, just stay where you are. He was talking through it. I didn't say a word. My concern was my wife and my granddaughter that she was looking after in the lounge. So Ivan can share. It's interesting how we got down this route, but Ivan can share his point of view.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is interesting because I think Frank touched on it, and Trevor and I are very different personalities. I mean, Trevor is a fighter. I'm not. I'm very much in the mold of what your dad encouraged you to do. Don't react in a situation like like that when things are threatened. And whereas as I said, Trevor grew up boxing. I mean, it was he was really a fighter. So his instinct probably would have been to react in that situation. And I think sometimes it is. And I can't say I did anything consciously. So it was simply my background, the way I'd grown up, the way I'd dealt with conflict situations, previously. I mean, I was in the military for my national service back in the conflict days in Rhodesia before it became Zimbabwe. So I had some training there. Trevor was also in the military here in South Africa. So we both have some, elements of a military background as well. But I don't know that any of that kicked in for me at that point in time. I think it was, much more the subconscious intent not to antagonize. So really just, okay, what do you want? Okay, you want my car keys? Here are my car keys. You want my cell phone? Here's my cell phone. You want my wallet? Here's my wallet. Sort of thing. And just take what you want. And I think that was that was the process that I went down. So yeah, it was an interesting situation. I mean, obviously looking back on it, one can try and analyze and reflect and dissect, but in that moment, none of it's conscious.
I'm going to change my mind then from what I said right at the beginning, half an hour ago. I said that I thought that all the big decisions in my life were conscious, and the big and the small decisions like opening your car was unconscious. But I think you both just proved to me that some of the biggest decisions that you make are subconscious. You don't even think about them. You just do them because you know in your heart that that's right. But you don't even think of that. It's not conscious. So I think I've changed my mind on some of the big decisions in life are certainly subconscious.
Leroy, come on board.
I was just going to add to that because you did actually mention about sometimes with the fight or flight, about saving someone. I wanted to just add to that, where sometimes you step into that decision. So basically, many years ago, I used to do security. Used to work in clubs and pubs. So if there was a situation, I had to choose to step into that conflict. But once again, it's about knowing what you know and knowing what you see. So therefore, if you're confident with yourself, you can step in and you're making decisions on what you see going on. So it is that fight or flight where basically you can't run away, you've got to step forward. So it is a sort of another angle of sort of that flight or fight sort of scenario.
And that's some of what I was going to add in here, Leroy. It was about space, because all I can remember of that time was I was not thinking. Well, I was, my wife, what was happening with her, because I knew there were other elements going deeper into the home. But we did not have the space. I had this hard blooming metal against my head, and I could see Ivan with the same thing against him. And when I think about the difference, one of my claims to fame here in my particular area was when my neighbor was taken out by an AK-47 attack. I mean, we've had some real big incidents here in South Africa with the transformation, which is understandable as people were looking to grab what they wanted to grab. But he took 7 AK-47 bullets to the body. And again, I was in the home. It was a Friday evening, 7 o'clock. He was next door, and this 60 odd rounds were shot. And I thought it was my wife again. And I mean, my heart went through it, but I had space. I ran in, saw that she was fine, then ran out to go and see what was happening outside, but I had the space to actually move. And as I ran out, these guys with their AKs came running past, and I knew enough to turn around and hide away from them, and they jumped over walls, and I ran down to the neighbor's place. That But because I had the space, I was able to do these type of things. And I was regarded then as the action man oriented figure that was able to do things. Cut a long story short, that became a R1 billion security project that we initiated in our community. I put that all down to having the space to think. Ivan and I never had the space to think. And when I think about it, I was in this vacuum. Ivan, whether he knew it or not, was actually turning around and he was feeding me, stay still, stay still, stay still. So that's why I give him the kudos for what actually happened on that particular event.
Right. So
I think I speak for the whole group to say I think you both made the right decision because you're here today.
And therein lies my point. With the sum total of all the decisions here today, and it's interesting to go back and if you've got the time to analyze what got you here, but what are we going to do from today going forward for the next 10, 20, 30 years?
I think that's
What your wife tells you, Trevor.
there you go. Problem solved. Problem solved. You don't need to think. You don't need to think at all. All right.
Yep.
So I see Michael joined us a bit late and he sort of stayed dark, but I don't know if you with us, Michael. We're about to wrap up the session.
He says in the chat he's just listening.
Okay. Okay. All right. I see that. I missed that. Thanks for that. All right. So I think we'll probably wrap it up on that. So, based on that, we need a decision. What are we going to chat about next week? So, any thoughts for a topic next week? Yeah, Frank.
No, I'm thinking.
No? You're thinking?
Yeah, no.
Trying to make a decision, Trevor. Ed?
I was wondering whether Lira wanted to throw something in from his security days, because it is that. I knew a guy that used to work for clubs, and fascinating guy. But it is how do you assess those situations? I'd be interested to hear from you, Leroy.
I mean, some a lot of it was confidence. I've done some martial arts in my past, so I wasn't great at it, but it gave me confidence in myself, and I went into situations with an outcome. No, and there was two choices. I'm going to get hurt or I'm not going to get hurt. Okay, but also I knew that I'm not going to throw the first punch, but I'm going to do what I've got to do. And I go in talking. So I would basically say, you guys have got a choice, yeah. And to sum it all up, I get paid whether I interact or don't interact. You have the choice to decide which one I do. And a lot of the times they're like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we're just messing about, and they go back to business. But you always get the one. You know what I mean? And sometimes you just have to deal with them and put them out. But in all the time that I was doing that work, I only ever got hit 5 times, and that was only after I put someone out, and they took a lucky shot of basically just swinging their arm and it catch me once they're off the premises. You know what I mean? And that happens. You know what I mean? But I always talk to people about and giving them choices. End of the day, you're here to enjoy yourself. You know what I mean? Do you want to enjoy yourself? Go carry on. If you don't, then I've got to work. And if I've got to work, you know what I mean? The outcome is the outcome. And one more thing, the good thing is about the people around you, the people in your team. I knew I could go in a situation because we moved as a team. Even though you couldn't see them, I knew they was behind me. You know what I mean? So I sort of worked with a Mexican guy. He was a big sort of boldy Mexican guy. And I knew that he was out of my eyesight, but he was there. So that gives you confidence, knowing the people around you allowed you to do those sort of things as well.
So I think the interesting thing there is going with an outcome in mind, but also the flexibility, wasn't it? Because you were prepared. You had your outcome in mind, but actually how you got it, you had 2 choices. Well, they had 2 choices.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the subject, is actually going with an outcome and flexibility.
All right. Yeah, let's go with that. So, yeah, the plan A, plan B, plan C, I don't know. It's is that the sort of direction we're heading there? But yeah, your desired outcome, are there multiple routes to get there? So I think we'll go with that. So great one, folks. Thanks for your participation this morning, and hope we see you next week, same time, same place, or you can join us at I think it's 2 p.m. your time, UK time this afternoon. We're back in the US, chatting again on a different topic. Otherwise, every morning, as you well know, 8 a.m. South African time, 7 a.m. now UK time. Every weekday morning, we're up and running, and hope to see you in some of those. So otherwise,
And I think the biggest decision we've got to make now is, do we all shout at the same time to waken Laura? Or just
Oh, well, you know what I thought? We should put her hand in a glass of cold water and see what happens.
Okay, folks. Have a good day.
have a good day. No worries.
Bye.
Yes. So.
You know.